Hello and welcome back to this very special episode of 5-Alarm Task Force. I'm your host, Steve Green. Happy to be with you and happy to have you with us. We have a very special podcast today because this is kind of like a little bit off the mark of what we normally do. And we are very lucky to have an esteemed panel who recently attended the Wingspread VII conference in Wisconsin this past August. Now, some of you may know that we were very much involved with the report on Wingspread VI, thanks to our good friends. And we must shout out to Chief Rubin and Chief Varner for putting this panel together for me to announce the some of the results of the conference of Wingspread VII. Normally, it had been a 10-year cycle, and I guess under consideration of the pandemic and other matters affecting all the agencies that come together at Wingspread conferences, that they moved it to a 5-year. Our first guest is Kevin Roach. He is a FACETS partner. He retired in 2014 as assistant to the fire chief of the Phoenix Fire Dept in Arizona. Kevin has over 30 years fire service management and consulting experience. He has experience as a leader and member of a number of management consulting projects in large fire departments. During his career in Phoenix, he managed the fire department's planning, fire prevention, and logistics operations. Kevin earned a BS degree in fire protection and safety engineering technology from Oklahoma State University and a master's degree in political science with a certificate in public administration from the University of Florida. Kevin, it's a pleasure to welcome you to the show, and thank you very much.
Hey, thank you for the welcome. An impressive resume, huh? Nice.
Very
well,
nice.
Good afternoon. So I guess what I've been asked to do is talk a little bit about the background of Wingspread. Wingspread's actually almost as old as I am. The first time it was held was in 1966. What Wingspread does is it brings together a very diverse group of fire service experts and people that have concerns about public safety, just to look over the horizon and think about where the fire service is headed, what sort of challenges the fire service is going to face in the future, and try and provide some information and some guidance on those issues. As was said in the introduction, we just completed Wingspread VII. The report's actually being formulated now. And I've been asked to talk a little bit about Chief Brunacini's involvement in Wingspread. He heard about Wingspread quite early, maybe Wingspread II or Wingspread III, and was very interested in planning and looking toward the future. Those of you who know or have read about Chief Brunacini know that he was always looking over the horizon, sometimes way over the horizon, if you work with him. Chief Brunacini became interested in Wingspread. I think he attended his first meeting and was told, "Hey kid, just sit in the corner, keep your mouth shut, and just listen." And then he actually became a big supporter of Wingspread and actually attended, I think, 4, 5, and 6 also, or managed the proceedings for 4, 5, and 6. So in a nutshell, Wingspread is forward-looking statements over the horizon, trying to prepare the fire service for the future. And I think it's striking when you see the report for Wingspread VII. I know that Jessica's including the statements of national significance from all the other prior Wingspreads. And it's interesting to look at Wingspread I and see that some of those issues are still very, very relevant today. And hopefully the Wingspread VII document provides the fire service with a view over the horizon to look at what's coming in the future and what's affecting the fire service today.
Thank you, Kevin. What other agencies, I'll just ask you before we move on, what other agencies besides the fire service and EMS are brought into this conference?
So it's mostly fire service people and very, very a wide range of fire service people. There are municipal fire chiefs, wildland fire chiefs and fire officers. The firefighters union has been involved in the past. Insurance providers for the fire service. The editors of fire service journals and magazines that are out there, industry organizations that have an interest in fire protection, such as the National Fire Sprinkler Association, and as I said, the editors of some of the magazines. Also, other organizations like the National Fallen Firefighters Foundation that has an interest in preventing firefighter fatalities primarily. So it's a very wide range, but it is somewhat fire service centric. Something that's new, relatively new in the last few years, is also some of the researchers that are doing work in the fire service space as well. they're also asked to join into the last version, Wingspread VII.
Great, great. Thank you very much, Kevin. Really appreciate that introduction for our listeners and our viewers. Our next speaker is Jessica T. Pickett. She's the founder and CEO of RPM Solutions Group, Inc., CEO and Executive Director of FIERO, which many of you I've heard already through social media and emails will be attending. She was an all-hazards lieutenant, retired from Fairfax County Fire and Rescue Department. Prior to founding her consulting firm, RPM Solutions Group, Inc., Jessica worked in diverse settings that range from BSL-3 research laboratories to the West Wing of the White House. Her company, RPM Solutions Group, is a consultancy firm that serves the project management needs of public and private sector entities. Her work with RPM covers diverse projects ranging from development of training programs and strategic planning for departments and agencies across the US and Canada, conducting research, development, and market analysis, and building bridges through public-private partnerships. She hopes to help break down silos between public safety, emergency management, and public health to improve services and response to community needs. Jessica, welcome to the program. Happy to have you with us.
Thank you, Steve. Very, very happy to be here.
So from your side, what did you bring and what did you take from the new Wingspread VII conference, please?
Well, I was very honored to be part of Wingspread VII, and I am part of the writing team. So during the process, we had over 32 individuals, as Kevin said, that were both geographically distributed from across the country and across from different sectors of the industry and the fire service that all came together, and they were broken up into 4 groups. And these work groups rotated and really focused and looked at some of the challenging topics that the fire service is actually facing now. And that included things like recruitment and retention, diversity, equity, inclusion, wildland fire challenges, structural firefighting challenges, members' needs, the changing mission of the fire service. Because when Wingspread first started, compared to where we are now, the mission of the fire service has greatly expanded. We also looked at community risk reduction and the federal fire focus, as well as looking at the incident command system and how do we operate with other agencies and make sure that we're doing it as efficiently as possible. So these were all just topics that were given to these work groups to talk about, to think about, and it wasn't a framework, but it wasn't a structural framework. They were allowed to sort of explore other issues and other topics as well. These work groups reconvened and they reported back on some of the areas where they felt the fire service has the greatest national needs. So as part of the writing team, we take all of this information from the work groups, we synthesize it, and we start to develop these statements of national significance. And as Kevin alluded to, Wingspread VII, and I actually have a copy of Wingspread VI right here, so it'll be looking similar to this. And Wingspread VII will include all of the statements of national significance from the prior reports, as well as the statements of national significance that have been developed by these work groups in this think tank, as well as providing background information. And it is our hope that this report will be distributed widely, will be read by members of Congress, by municipalities, so that they can truly understand that the fire service is critical infrastructure for the country and needs to be supported as such.
You bring up a great point, which is that back at Wingspread I, which was probably, I was around already by Wingspread I, because I'm the old guy here in this group. But we were a fire service that occasionally had a rescue company, and we responded that, or we co-responded with an ambulance service. We're no longer that for most of us. We are basically doing probably 85% of our call, 80 to 85% of calls are EMS calls, and the rest are fire. And of course, what's burning today is a lot different what was burning in my day in the mid 70s and early 80s. There are a lot of things that I'm sure it came up, which are very important to our listeners and viewers, especially in the fire service. We just finished our webinar at the end of August on PFAS in the future, that we can look ahead to a safer and healthier future with the changes that are forthcoming, because that's taken a really big toll emotionally on firefighters. I mean, I've had Dr. Peasley on a couple of times, and when he did his results that showed that he found in new gear dating back to 77, that's the year I started. Now I've gone through 2 scares already, and I'm in a third one right now for over a year, this mystery malady. But every time I talk with my doctors about it, I said, okay, you have to realize that I've been exposed to PFAS for 8 years before I got injured, and I had the ability, wasn't able to serve in active service anymore. Also, was the pandemic a key topic at the conference this year?
We definitely talked about the pandemic, the impact that it had, both on the systems as well as on our supply chain issues, and looking forward, how can we mitigate some of those challenges that we faced during these, this ongoing challenge that we're continuing to face.
Right.
So that definitely was looked at, and we're really looking at these issues, again, getting the perspective from members from departments of various sizes, industry experts, researchers who are dedicated to studying the fire service. And we're collating all of this information to develop these statements of needs so that we can have overarching goals that can benefit the fire service as a whole.
Right. And in a positive tilt to nod, I should say, to social media and our trades, trade magazines, we saw that once again, the fire service, even with their EMS side, stepped up and overcame the challenges. They rigged the whole backs of the rigs with plastic and then tore it down after each one, redid it again, did everything they possibly could innovatively before, again, as you said, a supply chain really developed. They did this on their own. So many of our departments across the country did this to help protect the patients they have to transport and to protect our members who were answering those calls no matter what. And I think that's something we need to call out. All right, folks, we're going to take a quick break here. If you're watching the video, you're not going to see any changes. If you listen to the audio, you know what's going to happen. We're going to be right back right after these words. So as always, please stay tuned. Hello and welcome back to this episode of 5 Alarm Task Force. I'm your host, Steve Green, and we have, thanks to our dear friends, Chief Rubin and Chief Varner, we have quite a panel here of our guests who are talking about the Wingspread VII conference. With us today is Chief John Butler from Fairfax County, Virginia, Jessica Pickett from her company, RPM Solutions Group, Kevin Roach, who was very involved with the Phoenix Fire Department. And if you're a firefighter, I don't know if you're a firefighter more than 25 or 30 years old, you know the Phoenix Fire Department, and you know who its leader was and who led us and taught us the great news about what we do, how we serve Mrs. Smith. And if you don't know who Mrs. Smith is, you better go to an officer in your department and find out the story about Mrs. Smith, because you really can't be a great firefighter in this country without knowing the story of Mrs. Smith. And Commissioner Adam Thiel from the city of Philadelphia will be joining us in just a moment. Right now, it's my pleasure to introduce Chief John S. Butler. He's been Fire Chief of Fairfax County, Virginia, Fire and Rescue since September 2018. He formerly served as the first internal fire chief for Howard County, Maryland, Department of Fire and Rescue Services, and was the first chief to have held every rank within the department. He is an active paramedic and holds a bachelor's degree from the University of Baltimore, master's degree from Johns Hopkins University, and certificates from Harvard University, the National Fire Academy Executive Fire Officer Program, the Fire Service Executive Development Institute. Chief Butler serves as the International Association of Fire Chiefs' second vice president on the board of directors, holds the Chief Fire Officer, Chief EMS Officer, Chief Training Officer, and Fire Marshal designations awarded from the Commission on Professional Credentialing, is a member of the National Fire Academy Board of Visitors, is a board member of the Metropolitan Fire Chiefs Association, and is a commissioner with the Commission of Fire Accreditation International. He is a retired U.S. Marine with 20 years of active and reserve service, including 2 combat tours. Chief Butler, it's a pleasure to welcome you to the show, and thank you for your service to our country. Oh, there he is. Okay, we're back.
I had a little
glitch.
Please there.
That's okay.
Well, thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
So, what was your role at Wingspread VII? Did you have a role? Did you go as more of a visitor? Let me see about it and see what it gives me for me to bring home to my guys and gals. What was it for you, sir?
Well, that's a good question. There's a life cycle, an evolution of what happened with me and Wingspread. Probably a year before we were in person at Wingspread, Chief Rubin reached out, invited me, talked a little bit about it. He had me at yes as soon as he invited me because I would do anything for Dennis. But I should have done a little bit of homework. I said yes and moved on. I'll be there. Tell me when, where, and when I should be wearing, if you will. And then I did some homework later and found out the gravity of what I had just been invited to, and humbled and honored. Throughout the time we were in Wisconsin at Wingspread, I literally, maybe every hour or two, pinched myself and said, what am I doing here? This room's full of smart people. I need to go back and and do what I do. But it was a reality check. And as Jessica said, how we got to consensus on a number of statements of need was magical. It was really impressive. I'd never seen something work like that before, a structure where there were breakouts, and we would conclude and get back and do the grading and the vetting out and come up to some consensus. Pretty impressive process.
And what topics did you feel were most important for you to bring back to Fairfax County?
Okay, so the short answer is all of them. The overarching theme, that I continue to resonate with is there is no 912. There's us, and the need from the community continues to grow. We don't have the luxury to tell Mrs. Smith, thanks but no thanks, we're not coming, or you're in the queue. We just don't do that. We go fast, and we get there, and we do our best to be nice and treat Mrs. Smith and get out of her living room. So
Sure.
To your question, there was not a topic that doesn't play out on the streets of any community, Fairfax County or elsewhere. There was nothing too eclectic and on the outer outliers. Were all important.
Right. And would you say that the conference itself, and this is what I've heard when I had the report from Wingspread VI, is probably one of the most, while we have these big national conferences that the trades put on and are wonderful, I've been to both of them. Would you say that the Wingspread conference rises a little bit above that because of its tight focus on specifically our industry, who we are and what we do and what we need to do and what we may need to do that we don't even know about yet?
So, you referred to it as a conference, and without disagreeing, I saw very little, if any, similarity to any conference. To the point
Right.
You're making.
Sure.
There's a handful of us. I forget the number, how many of us were there in that room, but it was super small in the grand scheme of things. And I'll tell you another phenomenon. After the 2 or 3 days we were there, I got back on that airplane and I was exhausted. I was intellectually and mentally drained, which is a converse from some conferences I go to. There was a lot of brain work. There were a lot of, synapses happening in that room amongst our group. And we got closer. Some of us knew each other before, and others were meeting for the first time. Some of the magic was the community, the fire service community is bigger than, the first responder on the nozzle. and there were a lot of partners and advocates and allies of the fire service in that space, and brought a lot of contribution and value to the cohort.
Right. Well, that's good to hear. In my professional career, when I wasn't a volunteer firefighter, in my professional career, I attended many national and regional conferences. And there were, only, like you said, there were only a couple you can walk away from and saying, I'm pleasantly exhausted and full, because I really got to learn from them. And I think, you know, we are our industry is on the cusp of change every moment of the day. We don't know what that next alarm is going to require from us. We prepare the best of our ability. We have our departments, et cetera, but we have to, part of our fulfilling our oath of protecting life and property means sometimes we have to throw something together to make it work.
Sure.
It may not be, we might not have a vehicle specialized for that, but we're going to find a way to do that task, because that's who we are and it's what we do. And I think what you also said about the meeting others is the fact that having traveled around the country, even after I was out of the active fire service, but I've visited firehouses all over the country. I will have to say that outside of my Boston roots, the second area was the greater Philadelphia area, because we have family outside of the city. Actually, our older daughter lived there for 5 years in Manayunk. Know that little station down there on the street just below her apartment, where she loved living in that neighborhood. And we were thrilled that she was in a great neighborhood there like Manayunk. And the one thing is this family that we are a family, and we can go to any firehouse in this country. And I've been in Israel, I've been in London. All I did was knock on the door, show them my badge, come on in. And I found that wherever I've been, and I think that's unique, that we can go, whether it's a small conference, a national conference, or we're just going to visit on vacation, and we say, I want to see that firehouse, or I want to go to that firehouse that emergency used, the R.A. Senator Memorial House out in L.A. They still welcome you with open arms, because we're part of the family. Yes, Chief.
No, it's a good point. I was having a conversation with someone yesterday, a consultant outside of the fire service, and she referred to our industry also as a family, and I agree. Well, we have to live that identity. We can't just say it.
Right.
We actually live it in a human dignity manner. And we touched on that. Well, we didn't touch on it. We spent a lot of time on diversity, equity, and inclusion and belonging. I learned from Jessica about the addition of belonging to the DEI grouping of letters that expresses the climate and that we should be aiming for. So that was very interesting that we talked as much as we did about DEI and belonging. Because it's, to some extent, it kind of goes back to Bruno. I mean, be nice is, that's kind of the epicenter, and Mrs. Smith. And sometimes we do really well with Mrs. Smith, or others in the community who, many might look down on, the homeless, vagrant, or the, whatever social judging that occurs. We treat our patients and our customers well in the U.S. Fire Service. We do a really good job at it, globally, nationally. And then sometimes we go in the firehouse and we don't do that well,
Right.
So, I submit and I challenge the U.S. Fire Service. If we're going to use the words "we're family," then don't just say it. Be it.
Live it. Right. Right.
Steve, may I add?
Sure.
I think to your point on family, the Johnson Foundation actually hosted this meeting at their facility in Racine, Wisconsin, and it's a beautiful place. The staff there is the epitome of customer service. It gave everyone the opportunity to be together during the sessions and after hours. And we were actually able to share a meal with the Racine Fire Department at their main fire station, and they opened their arms to us as well. I want to shout out to Chief Butler for his input on DEI issues, and his personal experience in Fairfax and elsewhere was really helpful with us. And then the last thing I'll say on family is that it used to be on every fire truck and ambulance in Phoenix, we had a sticker that said, "Our family helping your family." But Chief Brunacini suggested we change it to "Our dysfunctional family helping your dysfunctional family."
That's cute. Very apropos. When we created our nonprofit last year in the middle of the pandemic, Five Alarm Task Force Corp, it just has one. Our motto came out to be, we had for us discussed it, one family, one mission, first responders helping each other. We just sent a big check up to Dunedin Fire Department in New Jersey. He had 3-alarm fire in their firehouse last Wednesday. And one of my members of the board, volunteer members, Nick Higgins, who's the co-founder and editor of the Firehouse Tribune, is on our board, and Andy Starnes. Almost everybody knows Battalion Chief Andy Starnes. And if you have anything to do with a tick, and I don't mean one that bites you in the woods, Andy is the go-to person for that, and they're on the board. And we, every time we see an issue that affects our brother or sister and or their family, we go into action. We're young, but just a year old this month, and we've donated already close to $3,000 to several fire departments, and the rest of it, most of it, went to the families of brothers that we lost in the last 8 months, making the ultimate sacrifice. So you're absolutely right. That's our goal as well, is to give, to raise the funds, and that's what we do with our webinars. And folks, by the way, for you listening and viewing, we've just scheduled our last webinar for 2021. It's going to be December 9th at 6:30 p.m. Tickets will go on sale November 1st. And the topic is situational awareness, responding to emergencies on active roadways. We know the toll that this has taken on us. Greater Philadelphia, we lost firefighter Boyd's just a month ago, 6 weeks ago, in a tragic accident. Here in Florida, thank God, Lieutenant Ashley White is recovering. She's in rehab. But this distracted driver or entitled driver has taken a toll on first responders all over this country. And that includes our tow truck, our recovery operators, and our road rangers as well. And so our guests are going to be Dr. Richard Gassaway, whose specialty is situational awareness. It's going to be Deputy Chief Ron Tennant from Grand Rapids, Michigan, who has been involved in blockers and attenuators attached to blockers for over a decade. I just learned about this issue 3 years ago, and he's been in it for over a decade using attenuators. And also we have both Jack Sullivan and Todd Lease from respondersafety.com. So they'll be our speakers at this. So there is no topic in the fire service that we can actually simply answer with a nod or brush it to the side, because as all of you have said so far, everything that you discussed at the conference is something that can be taken home and used not only in your departments, but shared with your areas and your regional groups. Thank you very much, Chief Butler. That was great information. I love when you talk about family. I'm in the midst of writing an article about the concept of family in the fire service. Our next guest is Commissioner Adam Thiel. Is it pronounced Thiel or with a TH, sir? I just want to be sure I'm saying it correctly.
It's Thiel, but I never correct people, so it's all good, Steve.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Adam Thiel. He's the Fire Commissioner and OEM Director of the City of Philadelphia. In May 2016, Mayor James Kenney appointed the chief to serve as the 20th Fire Commissioner for the City of Philadelphia. Commissioner Thiel is responsible for leading the Philadelphia Fire Department's almost 3,000 plus members in every facet of protecting our nation's 5th largest city from fires and emergencies arising from all hazards. The commissioner also serves as director of the Philadelphia Office of Emergency Management. From 2014 to 2016, he was a deputy secretary of public safety and homeland security for the Commonwealth of Virginia. In that role, he helped provide strategic direction, policy advice, management oversight, and operational coordination for 11 agencies with an overall budget of more than $3.1 billion, that's billion with a B, and 30,000 employees. Deputy Secretary Thiel was directly responsible for the departments of emergency management, fire programs, including the state fire marshal's office, military affairs, the Virginia Army Air National Guard, and state police, along with the state's Homeland Security and Resilience portfolio. He has a much greater bio here, folks, but I want to get back, give him a chance and get back into the conference. Commissioner, what can you share with us from your experience there and what you brought home and what you brought to it as well?
Steve, thank you for not reading all of that. You know, a couple of points to expand on, I think. My colleagues have done a great job giving an overview of Wingspread. Some folks might be wondering at this point about the name and what is this Wingspread. It's both a place and an idea or an ideal. Wingspread is the facility that is owned and operated by the Johnson Foundation, which is the family, the Johnson, SC Johnson Corporation, as Kevin mentioned. It's also the core building is actually an historic property that was designed by Frank Lloyd Wright, right there in the complex. So it's actually a very small, the actual conference facility only holds like 36 people. So that is it's a limiting factor. It's a deliberate limiting factor for Wingspread. You have to apply actually to be able to go to the Wingspread facility to use the name. And for the fire and emergency services to have that opportunity is actually a really big deal. And that opportunity, of course, started back in the 60s. Definitely have to give a shout out to Chief Rubin and Chief Bruce Varner as well for working with Bruno to get the fire and emergency services back to Wingspread and making that application. We had the opportunity to meet with the president of the Johnson Foundation, Marcus White, while we were there, and he was actually involved in the proceedings. He sat in the back of the room. He had meals with us and was really engaged. And I think, he's relatively new to the Johnson Foundation. He was very impressed by the scope and the breadth of our work in the fire and emergency services. Like most folks, it's not something that people think about every day. Right. We think about it because it's our business. Mrs. Smith isn't thinking about the need to call 911, isn't thinking about what it's going to take for us to come and provide that compassionate, caring, and of course, most importantly, competent service. So we really had the opportunity, I think, to show the Wingspread leadership what the fire and emergency services is all about. And actually, we've already been invited back for the next conference in 5 years. So we're all going to save our energy. It's an exhausting process. The process is ongoing with the writing team that Jessica's leading along with Chief Rubin and Chief Varner. And I think what you're going to see reflected in the Wingspread report is really the scope and the breadth of what we talked about and the challenges and opportunities that are facing the U.S. Fire and Emergency Services today. Really the whole gamut. These are not ready for prime time, but I think you might see some statements of national significance around diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. And I want to foot stomp that. I think that is at the absolute core of everything we do for our citizens, residents, businesses, and visitors, as well as for our internal customers who are so important, as Chief Butler mentioned before. I think you'll see some talk about the fact that fire is still a problem in the United States. EMS is a large percentage of what we do. There are other folks who do EMS. There's only one number that you call anywhere in the country for fire protection, and that's the fire department. Here in Philadelphia, we operate the busiest ambulance in the United States. And yeah, about 80% of what we do by volume is EMS. We're the second busiest fire department in the United States. A lot of that is still, unfortunately and tragically, fires. And you can see those dots on the map. So far this year, we've lost 25 people, 25 Philadelphia residents in fires. We've had more than 150 injured, and we've had 1,600 people displaced from their homes in Philadelphia. And that's in the 21st century. It's shocking. It's preventable with engineering, education, enforcement, and of course, the great work that our folks do all around the country responding to fires. So it really is an and proposition, and looking at everything that we're doing, Wildland is a huge issue, not here in Philadelphia, but wildland is a huge issue, not just in the US, but around the globe.
Mhm.
And I think another thing we're talking about with Wingspread is how do we make sure this is located in the broader international context? Certainly looking at EMS and expanding EMS into the public health space. Jessica, very passionate about this. Dr. Jim Augustine, who many of you might know, another one of the presenters along with Chief Butler at Wingspread, and an incredible vision for how we can expand our involvement out into communities, front-loading care. And it's another thing we see here in Philadelphia. We have neighborhoods that are essentially cut off from the broader healthcare system. We are their lifeline. How can we do a better job of that up front? And I know they're doing things in Fairfax County and Baltimore. A lot of the folks who are represented there at Wingspread. Funding, we know that's an issue at the federal, state, and local level. So you might see some talk about that. The use of technology and data. We had some incredible folks, Dr. Lori Moore-Merrill, Sarah Janke, talking about data and research. That was really impactful presentation. Bill Genoway talking about the use of technology. I don't want to miss any of our great presenters, but I think that kind of tees up the scope that you can expect when this report comes out, hopefully soon. We're aiming for towards the end of the year to have this out. And as Jessica mentioned, it's really intended for a broad audience, not just the U.S. Fire and Emergency Services. We're hoping to get this into the halls of Congress to help open eyes and educate folks about what we do and our needs. The fire service still receives a fraction of the federal funding that other disciplines receive. And that's really something that that's an opportunity for us to educate 24/7, 365, just as we respond to emergencies 24/7, 365.
That's all key issues. And I think that especially EMS, I'm glad you mentioned that, because we know that there are communities, Fairfax County, Baltimore, DC have started programs. There's a couple of programs going on in California now that a little bit privatized, but they're still trying to work with the EMS to not require an ambulance or a rescue respond on every single call, and other ways of tiering that EMS, which will take a lot of pressure off some of the departments that are really like Philadelphia. And I can only speak directly to Philly and Boston because they're the only two areas I know well. But, I've been there. I see what those two cities are like. And the EMS calls, I take my radio with me wherever I go just to listen in. And it's just amazing. And of course, we're not, that doesn't even count, Fire Department of New York and how busy they are in LA County and LA City. But we're all, again, as we said earlier, we're all a family. And these are problems, not problems. There are challenges. We have to look at them as challenges, not problems. There are challenges, just like we do on a call. We get on the call and we do a size up. And wait a second, this is not what the phone call said. This was not what we got. Doesn't mean we just pack up and go home. It just means we have to say, okay, how do we work through this challenge? How do we serve the public, take care of the need, and go home safe and sound to our station and to our homes and our families? And that's the most important thing, that we meet the needs and yet, for the most part, stay as safe as we can to it. I read the Wingspread VI report after Chief Rubens shared it with me after it was published. And folks, I'll tell you, it is not light reading. This is not something you take to the beach and just lie in the sand and read it. But I will tell you, even been out of the active fire service longer than most of you are in it now, and not by choice, but just how it happened. I learned so much from that report about America and the American Fire Service and what the challenges we were looking towards and what we're facing, and yet everything we're doing to get even better. Right now we got these new hybrid engines coming out from one of the couple of manufacturers. Amazing that we can cut down just the thought of we don't need no stinking Plymouth vents anymore because we're not running any diesel inside the building anymore. That's going to take us another long way. That, yes, it's a heavier investment up front maybe, but think of the savings and the positive health repercussions something like that can bring to the fire service. And I think a lot of our members don't know that. They don't see that happening. They see an ad in a trade and they, oh, electric fire engineer, like that's ever going to work. Well, if you read the information about it, you can see that not only can it, but it is already working. We have several on site now in departments. And, you know, of course, the number one issue, I'm sure this was brought up, although we didn't mention now, is firefighter health, wellness, fitness for duty, as well as the cancer and behavioral health initiatives. You know, we just lost a firefighter to her own hand the other day in the station. We need to let our members know that there is always a place to turn. On our website, we homepage, when you scroll down, you can text badge to 741-741. We have that right there. There are a lot of agencies out there for our people, for all first responders, fire, rescue, and EMS and police. But we want to put something out there to let them know that there's somebody there on the other end of that text who will help you and talk with you and connect with you before you do something that you or others may regret. And I think that the DEI information is so important today. It's because of our whole makeup of who we serve has changed over the last 25 to 30 years. And we have to, so if we can change our way of delivery to help that group, why aren't we doing it? Chief Butler, as you said, we need to do the same thing and bring it home to our stations. We have to be able to do the same thing. We can't have political, racial, gender turmoil in our departments. We come to this job, whether again, career, volunteer, part pay, WUI, we come for one reason. There's a passion in our heart. There's a calling that we feel. I mean, I never intended to be a firefighter. I was planning to be a rabbi. And that's it. That was my job, work in a synagogue and be a rabbi. The next thing I know, I wound up in Greensboro, North Carolina as the director of a school, a religious school. And right half a mile down the street from my apartment in the county, I was just over the city line, was a volunteer fire department. I went in there to see big red trucks like I did all over New England and Philly and New York. Next thing I knew, I walked out with an application in my hand. And I said, the worst thing about this, I got to talk to my wife about it. And I did. And she said, you want to give it a try? Do it. And in 8 years, I loved it. And it still defines me, who I am. And that's who we all are. I don't think there's a firefighter who's active service, retired or disabled out, who doesn't feel that they define themselves as a firefighter, as part of who they are as a person. For me, you know, I'm a man of God, a man of family, an educator, and I'm a firefighter. And
Steve, I think what you're saying about your journey is important, and it's something that, you know, we talked about at length. And again, you might see some more about this, and you see it reflected in Chief Butler's resume or Jessica's resume. And again, they're both of their bios undersell everything that they've done. I think the point is, we really do, as individuals in the fire and emergency services, need to ensure that we understand and are savvy to all of the different perspectives, all of the different lenses, that we're able to put ourselves in other folks' shoes, and that we have that kind of true, really scope of knowledge and experience, training and education. You know, for me, 90% of what I do really has very little to do with fire and EMS per se. It's working at a different level, at the policy level, kind of speaking the language of economics, sometimes sociology, public health. And I think also, as you mentioned, the fact that we have to do a better job of taking care of each other and respecting each other, that is a safety issue. That is the core safety issue. If the folks that we work with are not safe around the kitchen table, how can we possibly expect to be able to go out there and put ourselves in harm's way together on our worst day? I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. And I've seen it done very well in a lot of places. I also know it's an opportunity space for us to continue to do work. And that's going to really help keep ourselves safe, developing that trust, understanding that the core of, belonging is at the core of teamwork. Teamwork is at the core of what we do. And we have to focus more on that. And again, I think you'll see We're all very strident about this. I think you'll see that reflected in the report.
I believe we will as well. And, I think another good friend of the show, Commissioner Jared Renshaw, recently published an article about what it takes when you become a chief officer of a relatively large department. And as you said, Commissioner, that it's not day-to-day fire and EMS. It's you become a policymaker. You have to plan the budget. You have everything like that. It changes the scope of what maybe a small department sees the chief doing. And when you're into a major metropolitan community, that changes the scope. And that changes not only that, but it reinforces your dedication to the people that you're caring for. And I think that's what our members have to understand, that they may be in a department where they don't see the chief every day or the commissioner every day. They once in a while, he or she will come by on a quick tour and stuff like that. But they need to know that that leader is with them, has their backs 24/7. And I think once we get that message out and they understand it, I think that's going to also help build a better and more dedicated familial core to the men and women who so unselfishly serve this country.
Yeah, I want to stay here real quick and kind of dovetail off of what the both of you have said with regard to the role of the 5 Bugle fire chief or commissioner and or commissioner. And we really need to continue to build our bench and build a posse and build folks who can take our jobs per se. We the 5 Bugle chiefs and commissioners should be looking outward and seeking opportunities to bring back to our ecosystem. There are a lot of partners in the community. Days of the fire chief navigating through the department and spending a lot of time in the department, they're still valuable. There's still a lot of utility in that and need. You still need to go and get off the balcony and get on the dance floor.
Right.
But don't sleep on what we should be doing and seeking more funding, more opportunities. A couple of weeks ago in front of the Senate Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee, I am advocating for USAR and the USAR system and more funding, building on what we've already received from the federal government. That trickles downstream all the way to our fire stations and our members, or speaking on behalf of our partners in the WUI environment. Just because we're in some of these built up high density communities, let's not forget about our partners and the climate, and the climate as in literal climate changes that's affecting WUI and wildland fires, and the fire season continues to grow. We need to get at the 30,000 foot level and talk about AFG and safer. All that said, I go back to there's still a need and expectation to go on the dance floor and engage with the rank and file, but being able to wear those two hats, kind of building on what Commissioner Thiel said, and you did too. So.
Thank you, Chief. Any other comments to close with?
Just going to say those topics that Commissioner Thiel and Chief Butler were just touching on, just as a teaser, definitely were discussed extensively at Wingspread, and will probably be reflected in some of the statements that you will be seeing when the report is released.
That's great. And I look forward to reading the report when it's released. I would recommend to all our viewers and listeners, if you are in the fire service, make sure that you stay tuned and notified for the release. We'll carry it here as well on the show, let you know about it, and read it, because it's fun to read the trades and read the ads, and you read a little training manual for this or that. This is going to be more of a training manual for your life in the fire service. This is what it's going to talk about. And it's going to, I believe, based on what we've heard today, that it's going to be a guide for the next 5 years of what we're looking to do as a service, what we're looking to do for the public that we serve, and what we're going to do for our members who, again, unselfishly serve in a role that very few people are ready to step into. We're a unique breed, and we thank the heavens that a lot of us were created to do this job and to help other people. Thank you all very much. Our guests have been Chief John Butler, Jessica Pickett, Kevin Roach, and Commissioner Adam Thiel, who are all at the Wingspread conference, Wingspread VII. I'm pretty sure they'll probably be at Wingspread VIII in 5 years down the line.
God willing.
Right. And I just want to thank you all. I know you all have very busy schedules, and I sincerely appreciate your time and your wisdom, sharing your wisdom and your experience at the Wingspread conference with us, with our listeners and our viewers.
Thank you for this opportunity, Steve.
It's been our pleasure.
Thanks
folks,
very much.
Thank you. Folks, that'll be the end of the video. If you're listening to the audio, we'll be back with a few messages right after this break. For those of you watching the video, thank you very much. I'm glad to have you. We'll see you again very soon. Take care.